Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to Searching for the Question Live. My name is David Orban, and I want to really thank you for following the show. Before we start, I want to remind you that we are streaming on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, on LinkedIn, on every possible platform. And since we are live, your questions and comments are always welcome. Of course, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can like the Facebook page and so on. We also have a Discord community on davidorban.com/Discord, where you are welcome to join. And if you find a show valuable and you want to become a supporter, a sponsor, or a benefactor on Patreon, you can do so on patreon.com/davidorban. Today's guest is Francesca Cavallo. I met Francesca in Milan in 2011, 10 years ago. And since then, she has had a really wonderful meteoric rise in the field of publishing. Her book, Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls, has become an incredible bestseller all over the world, published in 47 languages since it came out. I enjoyed it greatly and gifted it to many families with budding rebel girls, and I absolutely recommend it. And with her publishing company, Undercats, she just launched a new project entitled Paralympians. And we are here with Francesca today to talk about her experience with Rebel Girls, of course, but also to talk about her latest project, Paralympians. Welcome, Francesca, to Searching for the Question Live.
Hello, David. Thank you for having me.
So I always like to start asking my guests about their trajectory. You were born and raised in Italy,
Yes.
but then decided to go out and left for a few years, and then came back. If I'm not mistaken, you are now in Italy again.
Yeah.
So tell me about this circle of your past 10 years.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in southern Italy in a small town in the province of Taranto in the Puglia region, and my town is called Lizzano. And I left for college. I went to Milan to attend university there. And then while I was there, I fell in love with a journalist who was working on an iPad magazine for children called Timbuktu. And I decided to work on it with her. And little by little, we learned that the project that we were putting together could be called a startup. It was the beginning of the startup movement in Italy. And we decided to try and raise money from angel investors to turn that project into a company. So what we did was we started attending all sorts of startup competitions, which is where I think we met the first time. Before I joined the live, you were looking for a picture of us back in 2011. And it would have been in one of these contexts of these startup environments. And one of the competitions that we won was called Mind the Bridge. And the goal of this organization that is still active today is to connect Italian entrepreneurs with Silicon Valley. And we went to San Francisco for a 1-month business gym. And we were able to raise a first angel round there, and we took the company off the ground. But for the first few years, we were not profitable. We didn't make any money. So we kept on looking for opportunities to monetize the content that we were creating, which was mobile apps at the beginning. Then we went through a phase where we tried to make cartoons for kids. So we attended a few conferences to try and see if a few show concepts that we had could be monetized and sold to networks. And then I even designed a playground that we sold to the NFL. So we went through a lot of different iterations with the company until we landed on this idea of a book called Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls. And when the book came about, we had basically lost hope on the possibility of raising money from traditional investors. And we had started looking to crowdfunding as a way to finance the growth of the company. So we launched a campaign on Kickstarter and with the goal of raising $40,000. And at the end of the first month, we had raised almost $700,000 from 13,000 backers coming from 75 countries. And that was the beginning of the growth of Timbuktu, of the company, that I left, that I basically, together with my co-founder there, Elena Fabili, while I was there, I took the company from $0 to $14 million a year in revenues. And then I left the company at the beginning of 2019. And shortly thereafter, I started my second company, Undercats, which is the company where I am now.
And we want to concentrate on the latest project. I don't know how you took it, but when I realized it, I laughed, and I could afford to laugh because I wasn't involved. But for me, one of the most amazing signs of the incredible success of this book was the imitations. That it became a format. And I don't know whether there are half a dozen or several dozen, but I myself saw in my travels, because I always go to bookstores, and I could recognize that someone took the pains of copying the book in terms of doing it for boys rather than girls, or rather than midnight stories, they were other kinds of stories, but evidently they were inspired by your success to do something similar. It is of course a story that you tell of persistence and resilience. And it is also a story that suffers from survivor bias, because you could have given up. There's nothing that guaranteed that the last attempt, after trying and failing to find an app and a monetization and a digital this and a digital that this traditional book project could have been and would have been, and indeed it became, the foundation of this kind of runaway publishing a success. So in that sense, I'm always a little angry when people who are wonderfully successful like you are then put on a pedestal, and everyone has to look at them and say, oh, that is what you need to do. But what is it, right? It cannot be as it is an example, because unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are persistent and insistent and are resilient like you, but they end up not finding the lucky idea that gives them the success that they deserve. They don't deserve it less than you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, in my opinion, what makes me successful is not the fact that the campaign raised so much money, that the book sold so many copies. What made me successful is that I tried to build a career around meaning. So whatever work I have been doing over the past 10 years, it's been work that's been meaningful to me. So that is in my view of myself, that is what makes me successful. Because otherwise, for example, now we are 5 days away from the end of the campaign for Paralympians, right? This is my 5th Kickstarter campaign. And I would have to tell you, well, this campaign, it didn't go as well as the campaign for Rebel Girls, because that one raised almost $700,000. With this one, we raised 20,000. But it doesn't compare, because it's two different projects. And what compares, in my personal experience, is the fact that I believe in this project as much as I believed in Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls. Then some of the things you do in life will meet the interest, the dreams, will intercept something that is bigger, and that sometimes you were lucky enough to touch a lot of people. But some other times you touch less people. But what matters in building a career is that you're doing work that is meaningful to you, where you feel like you have a purpose. And that is something that up to a point you can control. There are lots of things that you cannot control.
To one observation and one question around that. The observation is that for sure, and I don't know the details, 99% of the people who learned that you were leaving the cozy infrastructure of the level of success that the previous project achieved, and I'm saying cozy, but of course it was crazy rather than cozy, because managing that kind of growth was evidently something that it is a miracle that you didn't go crazy. But when you left, people told you, how is that possible? Why are you doing it? And the reason why you are doing it, or you did it at the time, is because you had to keep progressing in the journey of meaning and of purpose that you just started. You couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Staying there would have represented stopping at practically one of the first steps of that journey that you have just started. Now, the question is about the project, and how do you start believing in yourself enough to understand that it is not even that you can afford to pursue your purpose and to build on meaning, but that every alternative is impossible. That is the only thing you can do, because too many people are in the situation where they convince themselves that they cannot do it. You proved that it is possible. And you are saying that is the lesson. The lesson is not the success. The lesson is the courage and the ability to understand that pursuing meaning and purpose is possible. So how is that within the reach of other people who today believe it is not within their reach?
I think that in a way I had the privilege of feeling that, I mean, I don't come from a rich family. I come from a middle-class family, but still, I knew that if I ever, completely had run out of money, I could go back and live at my parents'. so I wouldn't end up in a street, which is a privilege in and of itself. And it is something that, if I'm honest, helped me. Now, the thing is that there are many more people who could think this and I have a feeling that there are lots of people that are afraid to try something in case they fail at it. And one thing that I learned, because I always did a lot of projects, is that failure is much less public than we imagine. Because success is very public, right? When you create something and it is very successful, lots of people notice. That is sort of the definition of success. Everyone has their eyes on you because you are doing something that attracts people's attention. When you fail, normally it's because you fail at attracting people's attention. For me, this notion is very liberating, because when you launch a project and you fail at it, very few people notice. And that is sort of the point. You didn't manage to attract people's attention. So that is why people believe that, for example, lots of people that don't follow me closely believe that Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls was an overnight success, because they didn't see, they were, all my other attempts did not catch their eye. So this is a very useful thought, I think, for people to be less afraid of failure, because success is very public, failure is not, unless you end up in jail for something super bad, then your failure will attract attention. But in terms of launching a project, launching a book, people won't remember, because people are caught up enough in their own life to take notes with your failures. So this for me is always a very liberating thought.
Wonderful. What you said about having the safety net of a family that can support you when you are, or if it turned out as it didn't, that you would end up needing that kind of support, is a beautiful Italian reality. And I don't know whether 100% of the people who try something could go back to their families, but close to 100%. And I wish other countries had that kind of very strong family links, because in many countries, for example, in England, if you leave later than 16 or 17, you are frowned upon in the family. And I don't know today, but a few years ago, if you had to go back, it was also very, very badly seen. And in America, it is actually like a common trope of the 20-something that is still living in the basement of his mother. And he must be, as a consequence, someone who is in a bad space. And another thing that comes into my mind is how wonderful is going to be when we restructure society in a way that, whether we call it universal basic income or whatever else we want to call it, people will have what you call the privilege, rather than of the genetic lottery, because you were born the daughter of a middle class family. They will have it because they are human beings, and they deserve the chance of pursuing meaning and purpose, regardless of who were their parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the current project, Paralympians. Why did you launch it? Why do you think this is aligned with your path of exploration of your meaning and of your purpose?
Sure. Well, when I started Undercats, my main goal was, I asked myself, okay, I'm starting my second company. I want to go beyond the work that I did in Rebel Girls. So how can I do that? And part of what I realized is that there was a lot of need, not just for female empowerment in children's media, but for books and cartoons and movies that would be radically inclusive and radically diverse. So Rebel Girls started a very big trend, and now there are a lot more books that feature female characters. But there is still a complete lack of characters, LGBTQ characters with disabilities, characters of color in children's books and in children's television. Now, what happens is that we are somewhat biased to think that the children's books that we have now are neutral because they are what we know. And we think that the absence of gay people, of transgender people, of people of color, people with disabilities from these books is neutral. But it isn't, because it's actually conveying to kids the notion that in order to be a normal human being, you have to be heterosexual, you have to be able-bodied, you have to be white, which is a very biased notion and not at all an accurate representation of the world. So what I want to do with Undercats is I want to intercept this need for change that is part of so many millions of families around the world. Because up until a few years ago, to be a good parent, you had to sort of take care of your kids, you had to give them healthy food, you had to make sure that they had a good education. And that was it. It was a very private relationship and private responsibility between a parent and a child and their child. This changed with the Me Too movement. It changed with Fridays for Future. It changed with Black Lives Matter, because an increasing number of families around the world are starting to see parenting as the most consequential political act that they will do in their entire life. So they are starting to see the opportunity of parenting a child as the opportunity to give birth to a new world. And together with their kids, they don't want to look at the past for inspiration. So to stories that are set in castles, that are about princesses and chevaliers, they want to look together with their family at the future that they want to build together. And this is the kind of families for whom I want to create content with Undercats. So the point is, the mission of Undercats is to radically increase diversity in children's media and to inspire families around the world to take action for equality. To do this, we are going to publish stories about people with disabilities, about people of color, and about LGBT people. Now, if you think about, particularly about picture books, it is incredibly rare to find people with disabilities. There are a few books, like the most famous one is Wonder by R.J. Palacio, which is a fantastic book, but it's not illustrated, and it's a book about a child with a disability. But in terms of illustrated books, the most that you find about the representation of disability is the group illustration with the Asian child, the Black child, and the child in a hospital wheelchair. That is all that you find. And these characters are always sidekicks. They're never the protagonist of the story. So what I wanted to do with these books is I wanted to offer representation to some of the biggest champions of our time in the Paralympic Games. And I wanted them to be the protagonists of an entire picture book where we could start creating a blueprint for the representation of people with disabilities in picture books that is not a pitiful representation, where they don't look like these Charles Dickens orphans, where they look like the champions that they are, and they are cool, and they are desirable, and they are doing things that are admirable. So that is part of it's all part of this cultural project, of this mission of the company, of shedding light on areas that are now completely in the dark when it comes to children's publishing.
So there is a wonderful video about the project that I would like to show. It's just a couple of minutes. Let's look at it, and then we will continue the conversation.
Lays the front into the medals here.
Please take youngsters, please.
Fastest Woman on Earth tells the unbelievable story of Russian-American wheelchair racer and 17-time Paralympic medalist Tatiana McFadden. Back the campaign, and you will receive this book by the end of August, in time to see Tatiana compete at the Paralympics. The long jump will take you from Burundi to France to discover the story of record-breaking sprinter and long jumper Jean-Baptiste Allais. On Guard will inspire you through the story of Italian fencer Beatrice Villot, who became a world champion and a fashion icon. With The Archer, you'll learn about the life of one of the greatest Iranian athletes of all times, Taekwondo champion turned Paralympic archer Zahra Nemati.
When I found the stories of these athletes, I could not believe they had not been made into children's books yet. These aren't just stories about incredible champions. They are stories about adoption, about loss, about resilience, and about the extraordinary power that's unlocked when we are given equal opportunities. Right now, the representation of non-conforming bodies is largely absent from children's illustration. With this book series, we want to fill that gap, and we want to start creating a blueprint for the representation of people with disabilities in children's books. It's time we start giving all children the opportunity to see themselves in the stories they read. It's time we start giving all children the opportunity to see the world in all of its glorious diversity. If we do that, I believe we have the chance to give birth to the cultural revolution we need to build a society where equality truly matters. So come on this journey with us. Back this campaign if you can. Undercats is a small, fiercely independent company, and we need your help to publish these books. We completed the first one, Fastest Woman on Earth, and that will be out in August, just in time for the Paralympic Games. Help us publish the other 3 books. I promise that these stories and the stunning illustrations accompanying them will take your breath away. Thank you.
Wonderful video. I also want to say hello to Amjad, who says Assalamu alaikum. And Amjad, if you have a question or a remark, please, you're welcome to participate actively in our show. The idea is powerful, and I want to be one of the first to congratulate you on the campaign actually having reached its goal.
Yeah,
Because
thank you.
it happened just a few hours ago.
Yes.
And it is wonderful. Congratulations. So now the pledges are going to be collected, and the books are going to happen as they deserve to happen. And you are talking about a generational project here, because influencing families, how they raise their children, and then those children having been raised that way, shaping a world of inclusion and of opportunity, will take 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
So you are really laying down a path that is ambitious, world-changing, and it is going to take time. So, how do you feel about the responsibility and really the ambition of what you are doing?
You know, I think if you're starting a company in 2020 or 2021, I think what we realized is that if you are an entrepreneur and you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to sort of plan ahead, and you have to dream of having an impact, a positive impact in the future, not just to make some fast money and maybe, I don't know, destroy the environment or destroy your employees or just to make some quick money and go home. In my opinion, despite the fact that those kind of entrepreneurs are still vastly celebrated in the world of business, I don't think that that is really the most interesting way of being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur, in my view, is being a person who thinks that through their work and through the work of a team of people that they put together, they can influence a little piece of the history of the world. So that is a little bit what I dream of doing, by simply being present to the challenges that come to me every day, to the challenges that I go to work every day, by being present to our readers, by being present to my employees, and by being present to myself. Because one of the things that I wanted to do when I started thinking, I want to build a sustainable company, I asked myself, what does that mean? And being a sustainable company doesn't just mean that we use FSC certified paper for our books. It doesn't just mean that we try to print our books as close as possible to our distribution center to minimize the carbon footprint of transportation. But it also means, what makes this company sustainable for me as a founder? What makes this company sustainable for my employees? What if the company will become big? If we manage to open a big office building in a city, what makes the company sustainable for that city? So these are the kind of questions that we need to ask as entrepreneurs in 2021. And I want to ask myself those big questions, because that is, for the way that I am built, for the way that I am, what makes my professional life worth living.
Is Undercats a benefit corporation?
We are not yet, because we don't have the resources to go through the process yet.
Well, because what you're describing is exactly corresponding to that, and you can do two different things. One is to adopt these principles that you described in your charter of incorporation, and then the effort and the cost of getting certified by B Labs or whatever other organization giving out the decals, digital decals as it were today, is completely separate. You can walk the walk, and then maybe it is up to them to bang on your door and to please let Undercats be certified, because you are embodying those principles so clearly, and you are describing this all-encompassing mindset, which I totally agree. My friend Eric Ezechieli, who is one of the leaders of the benefit corporation movement, says that it is an idea that is going to be soon so evident that if any entrepreneur or corporate leader behaves differently, the question will be, why? Why do you want to harm your suppliers? Why do you want to break your employees? Why do you want to destroy the environment, right? And any activity that goes against those stakeholders is going to be frowned upon, and will become uncompetitive, and as you said, at the end, unsustainable, and it will just evolutionarily die out.
Yeah, I
Very
mean, if you want to work in a company like that, there is no need to start another one. There's plenty of companies you can go work for.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, um, I just backed the project
Mhm.
this morning, and I am very much looking forward to receiving the books in a couple of months. And I will be also very happy to keep spreading them together with the other projects that will embody similar inclusivity. For me, there is also an angle, and I want to take some time of our being together to be a little bit provocative towards you, and without any preparation, throw you into this set of ideas
Mhm.
around what to me means to be inclusive, and why the broadest possible interpretation of ways of living is so crucially important today.
Mhm.
I'm a card carrying transhumanist, and transhumanism is a philosophical movement that defines human beings by their desire and ability to overcome their limitations, to go beyond what is a given definition of being human, so that when they redefine that, we open up new opportunities for any individual or group of individuals to define how to fulfill their meaning and their purpose. And one of the reasons why, even though this philosophical mindset has a long history and a prestigious set of roots, the reason why it matters today as much as it does is because we are broadening the possibilities. Societies that couldn't afford to be inclusive towards other ways of being because they were too fragile, they were too insecure in what they themselves were and what they themselves represented, have become rich, not only from a material point of view, but they have become also more assured in understanding that they are not threatened, they are not attacked by alternatives. And as a consequence, they started to structure themselves. And this structuring is, in my opinion, only at the beginning. The
Mhm.
types of freedoms that we are acquiring are really radical. Freedoms that we have barely started to recognize. Cognitive freedoms, freedoms around our genetic makeup, uh, the very functions of our bodies. And it is sometimes almost impossible to talk about these freedoms. Um, as a matter of fact, many of these freedoms are criminalized. Uh, in most countries, it is prohibited to use drugs that alter your cognitive functions, except some. So, for example, if you want to use alcohol, you can alter your cognitive functions. But if you want to use marijuana, in most of the jurisdictions, it is a criminal offense, except when it isn't, because you go to sleep and then the day after, marijuana is legal, which is, of course, ridiculous because it just shows you that our understanding of what it is to be normal can change, and we can become more inclusive. This has been the case, for example, for homosexual people, gays and lesbians, who were and still are discriminated against in many parts of the world, maybe in most parts of the world. And only in the past few decades, there has been a progressive understanding of the rights and the absolutely normal desire to be included in society by them as well. So the question is, for someone who is a self-described radical in promoting diversity and inclusion, how do you establish what can society tolerate in a given moment? Is it compromising to your principle of radical inclusion to set yourself a limit? Or can it be counter to the sustainability of your initiatives to push society beyond what at a given point it can understand and embrace?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure that I necessarily believe that there is a right answer. I can tell you how I live these responsibility, or how I live my daily work in this. I don't compromise on what I believe is the right way of being inclusive and diverse. I don't compromise on that in order to meet the taste of the audience, because I always believe I always remember what Bertolt Brecht, the German author and theater maker, used to say, that an artist should never be afraid to precede his or their audience by miles. That is sort of the function of art in society, to precede your audience, not to follow them, not to precede them by centimeters, but to precede them by miles. Because by doing that, you can sort of set a direction. It is not a matter, I do not expect, and this is the reason why I work with children, as you were rightly saying before, probably, I'm not sure, but probably we may start seeing the impact of my work in 20 years from now. And I'm okay with that, because what I am trying to do through these stories is to set a direction, to say we should go that way. And now maybe we're not already all bought in the entirety of the ideas that I'm presenting, but also the other thing is that I don't talk about theoretical ideas. And that is something that helps, because even though I am radical in my beliefs, I present my beliefs through stories. And stories are never too radical, because by distillating your ideas into stories, you make those ideas more digestible, because especially when they are stories of real human beings. A real human being can never be particularly radical, because it's already existent. It's in the now. So my function in society is to be able, first of all, to see that story, and then to think, I think this story belongs to a children's book. I can't believe that anyone has made this story into a children's book. And by doing that, I am sort of creating a bridge between where we are, the existence of that person, and the direction that we're going toward. So, it is stories that make these ideas more digestible. If I were an intellectual and I were writing theories about gender or theories about race or theories about disability, it would probably be a little bit different. But in my case, I distill everything through stories. And in stories, you make these ideas very simple because you're just telling people, look, this person exists. Look at how beautiful the things that this person did in their life. Look at how inspiring this is. And by doing this, you're planting these seeds, and people don't even realize what you're doing because they are just enjoying a beautiful story.
You are creating a new narrative.
Yes.
Around which we can rethink how society should function. You are creating a new mythology that replaces those that we can actually realize serve the purpose and they stopped being of any help for children or adults today, whether Hansel and Gretel or the princesses and the knights and dragons. In the Middle Ages, they would prepare one to live in a society that needed that kind of narrative. But the society of the future deserves the ambition and the creativity that you are providing. Mm-hmm. So the last provocation for today, I wish for Paralympians the level of success that will guarantee copycats and for a new wave of these kinds of books to be in bookstores worldwide.
One of the most beautiful things that I've been told about Good Night Stories for Able Girls came from independent bookstores. And some of the owners of these stores told me that when the book came out, they had to create a new section in their bookstores for these books. And this is, it was fantastic for me to hear this. And with Undercats projects, I hope that we can create as many new sections in bookstores as possible to make sure not just that every child can see themselves in the books they read, but also that children that belong to the majority can understand from very early on that that human beings come in all forms and shapes and colors, and that is part of the richness of the natural world. It's not a drawback, it's actually added value.
Wonderful. Francesca, thank you very much for being with us today. Congratulations again for the success of the campaign, but also a real invitation for anyone following today that they still have 5 days to take advantage of great offers, great packages, early birds, to grab all the 4 volumes at a fantastic price and keep helping you in following through in your wonderful, radical, inclusive experimentation.
Thank you very much, David. It was great to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for following Searching for the Question live. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe our YouTube channel, put a like on the Facebook page, and if you think this is valuable, you can become a supporter, a sponsor, or benefactor on Patreon at patreon.com/David Orban. See you at the next episode of Searching for the Question Live.